Hello and welcome to the podcast today. I'm going to do something a little bit different today. I decided I can teach you guys a little more about how to actually find records about your ancestors. I think especially if you don't really have a family tree, you haven't done any sort of research, and you're like, how do I even get started doing this? I'm going to share with you today about my favorite types of records, and that is census records. Now, the reason that I love census records is, number one, they're relatively easy to find. They are readily available online, and you can learn so much about your ancestors just from finding all the census records available for them. So first of all, what even are census records? Well, census records were taken by the federal government, state governments. They also have census records, or provincial, but I'm going to focus on the federal ones today. Those are, they take like a survey of everyone that lives in the country, right? They even do that today. Different years, they gathered different types of information. But in the United States, from 1850 to 1950, every 10 years, a census record was taken that includes the head of the household and everyone in the household, and it names their relationship to the head of the household. Now, before 1850, in the United States, starting in 1790, every 10 years, they would list the head of the household, and then they would record how many people were in the household under each age group and gender. So those, if you are an advanced researcher, you can use those census records for research, but I'm just going to talk to you about those census records after 1850 to 1950 in the United States. And I'm going to share Canadian census records also because I live in Canada and a lot of my ancestors also lived in Canada, and they also took censuses every 10 years on the first, so starting in 1851 to 1931 is what's available right now. They actually had a census in 1825. Yeah, it's not, they have 1825 and then I think an 1852 one, and then it was every 10 years on the 1861, 71, 81. Anyways, they gather similar types of information as the United States census records, and I'm going to show you how you can find census records for the United States and Canada for free online. Other countries also had census records. In the United Kingdom, they had census records. A lot of the census records in Ireland did not survive the fire of the records house, but other countries also had records. Scandinavia, Eastern Europe, probably other places. But the place that I'm going to talk about today is the United States and Canada. So say you have an ancestor that lived after 1850 in the United States, you can find a census record for them. So after you listen to this podcast, or while you're listening to it, I want you to see if you can find all of the census records for your ancestor. Just choose one ancestor and see if you can find all the census records for them. The only census in the United States that was pretty much completely destroyed, I think there's 6,000 entries still alive, still, what's the word, present, still not destroyed. That is the 1890 census. So 1890, you're probably not going to find your ancestor in that census. Okay, so I'm going to show you how you can find a census record for free. You don't have to have a subscription to Ancestry. You don't have to pay for anything. On Family Search, they have census records for free. They have all the images for the United States censuses. For Canada, they don't have all of the images, but I can show you how to find them on the Canada Library and Archives website. Okay, so this is a little instructional podcast today. If you want to actually follow along and see the video of me finding these records, you can watch this on YouTube, or you can just listen along and try it yourself. Okay, so when you are on Family Search, I don't think you even need to have an account to look for the records, but it might prompt you to make one anyways. It's free, totally free, always will be free. Okay, but when you go to Family Search and click on Search up at the top and just click on Records, there's lots of different ways that you can search for records. This is the way that I like to do it. I like to search each specific census record at a time because then you're not going to get as many results. You're going to be able to narrow it down by keeping it broad, if that makes sense. I'm going to show you how you can do that really quick. I'm going to try to keep this short. Okay, so then you can either search by place or find a collection. I'm just going to click Browse All Collections so you can see what this is like. So Family Search has all of these record collections. So you can see these are like different ones. So here's Alabama births and christenings from 1881 to 1930. Okay, if you had an ancestor that lived in Alabama, that was born there between 1881 and 1930, their birth or christening record might be in this record collection, right? Okay, you can see on the right here, some have just a document. So they have the information about, like it was indexed and has the information for those records, or they have a little photo camera here. Okay, that means there's actual images of these records. You see some do not have images. That's just like indexed information. Okay, we're typing United States Census, and then this shows up with all of the United States Census records that they have on Family Search. So you can see that they all have images here, except for like this merchant seaman one. Anyways, so we're going to start at, maybe you had an ancestor. Maybe we could even just look up like your grandparent. Okay, if they lived in 1950, you can look up their image on Family Search. Now let's try 1940, just for funsies. Okay, so we're going to click on the census that you want to look for your ancestor in. You can type their name, a place, and a year. Okay, I'm just going to type in my one great-grandfather that lived in the United States at that time. All my other ancestors lived in Canada. So I'm just going to put Utah, where he lived. I don't even know a year off the top of my head right now. So I'm just going to hit search, and then it will pull up all of the results for that one census year. Now you can see there's only 2 results because his name is not very common, right? If your ancestor was named John Smith, you would want to know probably when they were born, know a little more about where they lived and some of their family members so you can make sure you find the right one, right? So we just have a Berg Ellingson and a Hugh B. Ellingson. And this is Berg. I know that his second wife was Eva Ellingson, and these are his children. So then I can look at the census. And this is my favorite part. This is why I love censuses so much, is to learn all that I can from that one document. So don't just leave it at this. Yay, you found them. Sure, that's them. But click on the image. That's where all of the exciting goodness comes that you can find about your ancestor just from a census record. So we're just going to wait for this to load. Okay, now, then you're going to zoom in. Use the little controls here on Family Search. Zoom in and try to find your ancestor on that page. Okay, so I'm just going to start at the left and tell you all of the cool things that you can find from the census records. So first we can see where they lived, right? You lived in Salt Lake County. You lived in Salt Lake City. Okay, so you lived in Salt Lake City, Utah. This first column is the street that he lived on. He lived on Crandall Avenue. And then the house number is this 973 here. So you can see all the columns headings here at the top. Censuses are going to be different depending on the year. This one has their address at the front. So if they lived in a city, you can get their address. My favorite thing to do, okay, I have lots of favorite things to do with finding information about my ancestors, but now I have his address, 973 Crandall Avenue, Salt Lake City. I can look that up on Google Maps, see if it's still standing. It is, I believe. I think I found it before. And then you can learn about their house. You can see what their house was like. You can see where they lived, if they were close to churches or parks or schools, or what their day-to-day life might have been just based on that one little piece of information. Okay. Can you see why I like censuses so much? Okay, then we can keep going. This is just their household information. Let's zoom in a little more. Number of households in order. Okay, so they just number each household. If their home was owned or rented, the value of the house, or if owned, or the monthly rent if rented. And then what's this one? Oh, do they live on a farm or not? So let's take a look at that. So we have that they own their house. It's worth $2,000. And no, they do not live on a farm. Okay, then we have all of the people in the household. Berg and his wife, this little X here in the 1940 census, they signified who gave the information, which is super helpful to know how accurate it might be. So Eva gave the information about her husband and their children. We have their children all listed here, relation. So sometimes you can, see grandchildren or mother-in-laws living with a family, and that can give you more information. Okay, then we have if they're male or female, their race, they were all white, and their age here. And then if they're married or single, that's the M or the S. I'm not sure what this no or yes is. Education. So if they attended school in or since March 1st, 1940, and then the highest grade of school completed. So see, we can learn that no, they did not attend school. My great grandpa Berg Ellingson, he went to 1 year of high school. His wife Eva went to 8th grade. Their daughter Eva May is in her 4th year of high school. Okay, so you can kind of see how educated was your ancestor. This is just the 1940 census that includes that. I don't think other censuses have that detailed of. It just like says if they're in school or not, I think. Okay, then we have their place of birth, their residence in 1935. If it was the same place or if it was different, the government just wanted different types of information. They want to see how many people moved from their residence in 1935 to 1940 for some reason. Then we have employment for people 14 years and older. So if they were employed, what their occupation was, in what industry. We even have their income. So I'll go sideways. What does this say? Amount of money, wages, or salary received. Okay, I believe that was for, the previous year in 1939. So it says 12 months ending December 31st, 1939. Okay, and then number of weeks worked in 1939 is this column 31, and then column 32 is the amount of money they made in 1939. And did this person receive income of $50 or more from something, from sources other than money, wages, or salary? Okay, so this was, if you remember, this was just after the Great Depression. So the federal government wanted to know how their people were doing, how much money they had made, if they were getting money from other sources besides work and things like that. Okay, so we can go down to my great grandpa here, Berg. Scroll over. He was living in the same house in 1931. You can see his AL here. I forgot to do that. Citizenship. So whether they were born in this country or they are aliens. So you can see they wrote down alien for Berg and his wife, and then that was crossed out because they were actually born in the United States, but then they went up to Canada, then they came back down. So you can see their children were, I think all but their youngest child was born in Canada also. Okay. That can give you some information. Okay, then we have, what's this? Yes, yes. No, no. Okay, if they were at work, stuff like that. Okay, so then we can see what his occupation was. He was a salesman at a retail music store. He worked for 52. No, he was out of work. Number of weeks worked in 1939. So, is that right? I think they might have filled that out wrong. This says number of weeks worked in 1939, equivalent full-time weeks. And then the amount of wages, including commission. Okay. So it says that you worked 52 weeks, but made $0. I'm not sure how that works. But then it says yes, under if they received, did this person receive income of $50 or more from sources other than money, wages, or salary? Yes or no? So yes. I'm not sure how that worked. It says he worked 52 weeks and made $0, but got money from somewhere else. So I'm not sure how that works. Then we also have their oldest daughter was a fountain girl at the lunch counter. She worked 32 weeks the previous year and made $320. Okay, so you can see how that can give you much more information about your ancestor. You can think, well, how did they make no money, or was that just recorded incorrectly? I don't know. Then we can look down the page and compare how much they made compared to other people. We have this miner here who did not work anything the previous year. They did get money from other sources. So maybe there was some sort of government relief in 1939. We have a teacher here who made $950 the previous year. A paper cutter got $1,500. We have an accountant, got $2,400. So you can see what life was like in their neighborhood, what amount of money people were making. You can even compare their houses, how much they were worth. Here's one that was 2,500, and theirs was 2,000. So it's pretty, a bit less than their neighbors, but not too much less. So that can give us some information. We actually see that there's a supplementary question for my great grandpa there. So let's go down here. And here we have Berg Ellingson. So some censuses have this, they'll have a random line that person will answer more questions. So looks like my great grandpa, he happened to fall on that line. So we have him here as the birthplaces of his father and mother, Norway and Pennsylvania. And then what language they spoke, English. If they're veterans, no, he was not. Social Security, does this person have a federal Social Security number? Yes. Were deductions? Let me see what that says. Were deductions for federal old age insurance or railroad retirement made from this person's wages or salary in 1939? Yes or no? Yes. If so, were deductions made from all, 1/2 or more, or part but less than half of their wages or salary? All. Okay. And then that's about it for his. Then these are other office use things. So get a little more information there at the bottom about him. Okay, that is a US Census record for 1940. So you can see, what did I learn about my great grandpa? I have his address, where they lived, how many children were living at the time in their household, his occupation, where they were all born, where they were living in 1935, what his occupation was, how much money he made, how much his house was worth, where his parents were born. We got that at the bottom there. So you can see you can learn a lot. So don't just leave it at that first page when you have the indexed information that they pull out of the record. That's not everything. So you want to actually look at the record and see what else you can find out about your ancestor. Okay, other census records are similar. I'm not going to show you how to find those because I don't want this to be forever long. But now I'm going to show you some Canadian census records, how you can find those for free online also. So I'm going to go back to search records, and we're going to do the same thing for a Canadian census record. They actually have the 1931 census available now. So I'm going to look for, actually, no, I'm not going to put that there. Okay, we're going to browse the collections just so you can see which ones have photos and which ones do not, because not all of the censuses on Family Search for Canada have photos. So here's the Canada census. You can see they start 1851, but there is like Lower Canada 1825, 1831, 1842. So there are some other ones. Then there's also some provincial censuses because Canada wasn't a country until 1867, but there are some before that that are still called the Canada Census. Anyway, so here we have 1851, 71, but then you can see which ones have photos over here. So you can see that the 1911 census does not have images, or the 1891 or the 1871 or the 1850. And then they also don't even have the 1921 census on Family Search. I'm not sure why. They do have it on Ancestry if you have an account on membership on Ancestry. And I believe they have all the images on Ancestry too, but you do have to have a paid subscription for that. So you can access these on the Canadian Library and Archives website. I'll put this link in the show notes, but if you just Google like Library and Archives Canada census records, this should come up. So here's all of the censuses that you can look for. So yeah, they have all of them there. They have the pre-Confederation censuses, and then after Canada is actually a country, and then they have some prairie, some provincial censuses. Okay. So you can see they have 1921 here too. So then the only thing with searching on the Library and Archives website is that you have to put their name in exactly. So it doesn't show up variable matches. So you have to kind of try different things to find those records. At least that's how it used to be. I think it might be the same now. So I'm just going to try to search for my grandpa. Let's just look for him here. I'm just going to put his year of birth. You can set a range if you want, which actually I probably will because sometimes their ages were off. Okay, you can add even more information there. This is actually different than it used to be. You've updated it. Okay, so here we go. Here's one hit for my grandpa, and this is him. So he was 6 years old in 1921. And then you can see the image here, and you can see what we can learn there. I'm not going to go through it all because it's going to be similar, but you have index information here that shows he's actually listed as son, but he was living with his grandpa, I believe. Okay, now I'm curious. So let's take a look because I haven't looked at this for a while. Okay, so let's look at this image here. How do I zoom in? There we go. Okay. Oh, he was living with his dad right now. Interesting. Okay, so his mom died. Oh, I remember this. Actually, he was indexed in both places. Okay, so his mom died when he was 4, and he went to live with his grandpa, and his father remarried and moved up to Calgary, I believe is where he was living. Yep. And then moved down to Utah. So I remember I actually did find this, and he's listed in 2 places. So here he's listed with his father, but I don't think he actually lived with his dad. And he is also listed in his grandfather's house, but his grandfather's last name was Hall. So I think he might have had the last name listed as Hall. Anyways, doesn't really matter this. But then you can see that it gives, similar information, where they were born, the countries of their parents' birth, and then he was a piano salesman. Okay. And he made $2,400. Is that what that says? No, 400. Anyway, so it gives you similar information as the US Census, but you can find those on the Library and Archives Canada website for free. You can also look for them on the Family Search website, but not all of them have images. So I'm going to look for this one for my grandma. I just actually pulled it up before I started recording. And I believe the 1931 census was indexed by AI, like it was done by the computer. So some of the names, yeah, aren't quite right. So this says Nellie Pori, like her last name was Perry. So some of the names like don't even look like real names just because AI doesn't understand as well as humans, right? So then you can look at the image and see what you can learn about these censuses. So this is my grandma. She came to Canada when she was 4 from Wales. So in 1931, she would have been about 11 years old, I believe. Okay, so then we can see where they were living in the town of Tabor as part of the Lethbridge district, it looks like. Okay, and then you can see where they live. So here we have even their address. Oh no, that's $9. What is that? That's their rent. Their rent was $9. That's very cool. Okay, they live Southwest 4th Avenue. Is that what that is? Oh no, that's the rooms of their house. And it also asks if the family has a radio. Okay, so you can look at the headings and see what facts they are recording on each census. But here's her father, John Perry, and then Kate Perry is her mom, Richard, and then Nellie is my grandma. So here she's listed as a daughter. She is female, single, 11 years old, was born in Wales. They came in 1924. She speaks Welsh, but then that's crossed out for some reason, or maybe that's not speaks. That's probably origin, racial origin. And then we got language. Okay. So Welsh. No. does that say? Language other than English or French spoken mother tongue. No. Okay. Church of England is what their religion is, and she's a student. So you can see her father was a miner, was coal mining, and he made $200 the previous year. And he has no job currently. Okay. So you can see how much information I can find just from that one census. I can see that she was living in the town of Tabor with her parents and three siblings. Her father only made $200. Was that the previous year? Total earnings in the past 12 months. So he had earned $200 and he currently does not have a job. I know that he traveled around a lot just to find any sort of work. And so that can tell me a lot about what my grandma's life was growing up. You know, they probably did not have a lot. Remember, I interviewed her about 10 years ago, probably, and asked her about her childhood. And she said they always had enough. Like she never thought of herself as their family as being poor, but she's like, we probably were. Actually, we were. We just didn't feel like that. So that can give us some more insights into what life was like. You know, their rent was $9 a month. Look up with inflation, what does that equal today? That can tell us some more about what things were like for their family. So that is why I love census records so much because they're pretty easy to find. I mean, I know those ancestors I looked up. I mean, I just looked up my grandparents and one great grandparent. I know, you know, their family names, their children's names, and spouses' names. So that's how I knew they were the right records. So you'll need to know that information to make sure you're looking at actually the right census record. But compare names, compare dates, and locations, and make sure you get the right one before you start diving in some more. But I want you to choose one, either a grandparent or great grandparent, and look for all the census records that you can find for them. So look from when they were born to when they died, what census records would there be, and see what you can learn about them. See if you can find something new, find something about their occupation, how much money they made, how well off were they compared to their neighbors. Think about some of those questions. You could even maybe look up their address and see what if their house is still standing or what it might have been like where they lived. This is a huge part of what I teach in my online course, Know Your Ancestor, where we look at records deeper. This is just one type of record that we're looking at is census records and how much have we already learned about this ancestor. But when we look deeper at what happened to our ancestor, what their life was like, we can connect to them deeper. We can connect to them, make that connection even stronger. And I feel like that's the whole point. Like, why do we even look for our ancestors? Why do we try to build our family tree? Is that just to, I don't know, have some sort of pride or feel like we know more about where we came from? I think that's obviously part of it and is a huge motivation for many people. But for me, I feel like, well, what's the point? Like, why does it matter? Why do I care that my great grandparents came from Wales in 1924 with hardly anything? Why do I care that they lived here and he made $200 in a whole year and was out of work and had three children at home? And like, why do I care about that? Why does that matter? And I think it only matters when we are seeking to build that connection to our ancestors, when we feel that kind of pull to them, to learn more about them, to feel their presence, because I believe our ancestors are still here, that they are here to help us, to cheer for us, to bless us, to guide us in our lives. And I think that when we know, I know that when we know who they are, when we know their lives, when we know some of those hard things that happened to them, those good things that happened to them, those stories of character and understanding who they were as human beings, that helps us to feel that connection to them even more. So that's the whole point, right? That's the whole point of doing family history, of learning about our ancestors, is to build that connection, to understand those patterns, to understand where we come from and why we might be the way we are today. So hope that inspires you a little bit to dig into some of your family history, to look at census records, to look at the actual images of these census records and see what you can find out about your ancestors. So If you do this, come and tell me. Send me a message on Instagram or send me an email and let me know something that you learned about your ancestor as you looked at all of the census records for them. I know some of us, like me, I have many family members that have done lots of research on my family tree, but some of these census records I pulled up today aren't even on our family tree on Family Search that we all work on together. This 1931 census, I don't think it has been added unless I did already. I can't remember, but they get missed. People don't think, oh, why should I find all the census records? They find one and they have their birth, marriage, and death. Who cares? But census records have so much information that we can learn, that we can, find out more about our ancestors. So take the challenge. Go choose one grandparent or great grandparent and find all the census records for them. And then come tell me about it. I'd love to hear. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast today. If you want to get the online course, Know Your Ancestor, it is on sale for the rest of May for $100 off. So you can get it for $200 or for monthly payments of $55. So you can go sign up at knowyourancestorcourse.com. What I talked about today, looking for census records and really diving deep into what is in those census records, is what we do in the online course, but times like 2000, I don't know. We're looking at all aspects about your ancestor's life. So if this is something that interests you, if you want to really dive deep and know who your ancestors are, not just like the details about their life, but their character, what their life was really like, and how their life might be affecting you today, go to knowyourancestorcourse.com and you can sign up for my online course. All right, thanks so much for listening today, and we'll see you next time.